Hello, I'm going to show you a way to make mundane forecasts. In other words, a way to forecast what is happening in general in the world. We often see these forecasts for what's happening next week, what's happening the coming month, etc. And I'm going to show you a nice way to develop your forecast and also to evaluate how well it's working. I'm making this forecast on August 19th, 2017, and the past few weeks have been very stressful. There was a white nationalist, what would you call it, uprising, aggressive action in Charlottesville, Virginia in the United States, and then a few days later, a terrorist attack in Barcelona. It's a great deal of tension building up just before that, a lot of tension building up between North Korea and the United States. Well, there's always these international tensions, but it's really built up. I think it's fair to say that these past few weeks, the stress meter has gone above normal. Could we have predicted that? Well, interestingly, two friends and colleagues of mine told me about an astrological pattern that started in late July, goes through August, and my first thought when I heard it was, whoa, look out for big problems, look out for problems with North Korea, look out for problems with all kinds of fanatical extremist groups, and it's been happening. Then I decided, well, let me see how this would look if I was to map it out a little bit. And I made this graph, and you'll notice here, this is for 2 years, for 2006, January 1st, 2016 to January 1st, 2018. And when you look at this graph, here we start in January 2016, July, November, January 2017. Do you notice anything interesting? Well, there's this little hole here where the graph goes up right in August 2017. So I developed this graph to implement my ideas so I can test them in the future. And using the formula that I developed here, we do see the peaking of stress, of action, of activity in August. Now I'm going to show you how I make this graph and how we can use it to interpret and to make predictions. Basically, this graph is a graph of hard aspects. We have this idea in astrology that when there are oppositions and squares, there's more tension and action in the air, and this graph is based on that idea. And it uses what I call vibrational astrology, which includes additional aspects, but you can use this concept with almost any astrological concepts and ideas to develop these graphs and test how well your forecasting is working and give you a nice, simple, clear way to predict in the future. Now, that's the 2-year graph. If I look at it for just 2017, we can of course see the dates a little more clearly, and we see more detail in the graph, and we see that this is indeed starting in late July, peaking in mid-August, right about the time I'm making this video, and then it fades out by mid-September. So this peak time, we also see 2 peaks here. So now let's zoom in a little bit more, and let's look at July, August, September, October. So I made another graph. I'll show you how I make these graphs. And now we just see the dates a little more clearly and what's going on. Okay, and what we're going to see is exactly what the aspects are. And the aspects that are making this bubble, this jump in stress, is essentially Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, is what we're going to find out, that there's a Uranus, Neptune, Pluto configuration in the sky during the month of August that's making people go nuts. Well, they're already nuts. It's taking the people who are a little crazy and firing them up even more, and they're getting way out of hand. And that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing happening. So there's a graph. I've got a lot more to explain to you. I'm going to explain to you how we see those details and how we come up with those interpretations. But the basic idea I want to get across now is that you can make these graphs to see how the planetary patterns that you're looking at are increasing and decreasing over time, and easily see what time periods are highlighted. And with this graph, we see the August 2017 is highlighted. Now, the way I got this idea for this particular predictive method was in early July, about a month and a half ago. Two friends and colleagues, Linda Berry and Starlene Brighter, told me about this planetary configuration that starts in late July, ends in early September. It's a configuration of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And when they told me about it, my first thought was, oh no, watch out for political extremists and fanatics and likelihood of terrorism. And sure enough, the violence broke out in Charlottesville, Virginia, and then shortly after in Barcelona, Spain. And I'm making this video on August 19. The eclipse is in 2 days, and right at the time of the eclipse on August 21st is one of these peak dates. Well, let's go back and look at it. If we go back here, right here, see this little peak right here? This is right at the time, August 21st and 22nd of the eclipse. So a lot of people are nervous or excited about the eclipse. Well, coincidentally, there is this powerful astrological configuration going on the whole month, building up a lot of stress. And so I'm concerned that there will be some additional violence and outbreaks over the next few days. So I would be a little bit careful if you're hearing this video in time over the next few days and this whole month of August in general. Okay, so this happens a lot in astrology. We make a forecast, it works, we're very proud of ourselves. Look at that, I predicted there would be problems. Well, can I use that information in the future in some easy, direct way to make forecasts again? And that's why I built this graph, so I could do it in the future more easily. Also, I'm going to predict that in late September to mid-October, so after this tense period in August, a few weeks after that, heading into late September to mid-October, I think there are going to be actions taken against terrorists, against extremists, but it's important that these efforts are not naive and they're not motivated largely by the personal benefits that the people get from them. This is what's happened in the past in previous military actions by the United States. The United States went out to get the bad guys. They also, in the process of getting the bad guys, oh, look at all this nice oil, let's put our companies in here. And there's a lot of just being naive, thinking people are just going to say, oh, this is great, we're being liberated. No, that's not how it works out. And we may have this same kind of scenario work out in late September to mid-October, where actions are taken to get rid of bad guys, but they're a little naive and also a little bit selfish in terms of looking what can be gotten from those actions. Okay. So again, I want to thank Linda Berry and Starlene Brighter, and a way to recognize them is that these are their websites. Linda's website is astrologicaldepth.com and Starlene's is rockstarastrologer.com. I like to just give credit and promotion to people who've contributed ideas that I'm building upon in these videos. So here's what I did with the graph. We know that oppositions and squares are hard aspects. Almost all astrologers in the Western world believe that. And also we can think of conjunctions as hard aspects. So we've got the one, the whole circle, the half the circle, quarter of a circle. Some astrologers go to eighths. That would be the eighth and the 3/8, the 16th. That would be the 1/16, 3/16, 5/16, 7/16. Why am I leaving out 2/16? Because it reduces to 1/8. And then you'd have 30 seconds, 64ths, 1/28. So one idea in astrology is that as you double the number, you're continuing to get hard aspects. Now that may sound a little wild and bizarre, that 64ths of a circle could be important, but let's test out the idea. And that's what this graph does, is it's going to test this idea that all of these aspects are motivating and driving and push people and stress people. So let's test out the idea. How would we test it? Well, what I did is I'm going to just look at where the planets are in the sky, and if they're within a 1-degree orb, a conjunction, opposition, square, these eighths, the 1/8, the 3/8, these 16ths, if any of these aspects occur in the sky, I'm not doing it to somebody's chart, just in the sky, planets come into those aspects within a 1-degree orb, I'm going to graph it. I'm going to have the graph go up because those aspects occurred. And also, if the outer planets form some of these 32nds, 64ths, 1/28ths, I will graph that. I will only do it for outer planets because the higher this, we can call it harmonic or fractions, the smaller the orb. I mean, obviously, you're not going to give, a 30-second aspect or a 3 30-seconds aspect a huge orb. Otherwise, the planets are always in those aspects. So we give smaller orbs to these higher fractions, and because the orbs are smaller, the aspects don't last that long. But an outer planet moves very slowly, and they can be in these higher harmonics for longer periods of time. So are you following all this? So what we're going to do is we're going to show a graph of when the planets are in hard aspect. And what's really cool about this is for the outer planets, we will include these high harmonics. And then we'll see if it makes sense. Does the graph seem to match the data? And you can use this for all kinds of things. I've done other videos where we've predicted gold prices. We're working on predicting baseball batting performance. Anything you want to do, I'm just showing you one application of this idea of creating these graphs to see when certain planetary aspects or patterns are occurring. So what happens is for these 30 seconds, or sometimes called 30-second harmonic, we're going to use a 1/2 degree for the 64th, 1/4 degree for the 120th, 1/8 degree orb. So in other words, 64th harmonic aspects get a 1/4 degree orb, means 15-minute orb. Very, very small orb. But the outer planets will stay within a few minutes orb for days or sometimes weeks. So they can form these aspects, and it's just interesting to see what will happen. And we're going to see something very interesting this month of August. As we speak, a very, very fascinating pattern is occurring. So here, more precisely, is how I set up this forecast. Any planet, except the moon, I put here 9 planets. We've got the 10 planets except the moon. So if any of the 9 planets are in the 16th harmonic, 16ths, also including 1, 2, 4, and 8. In other words, if they're conjunction, opposition, square, the 8th harmonic, sometimes called semi-squares and sesquiquadrats, or 16th harmonic, any of these aspects, if 3 planets are all aspected to each other. So I'm going to look at just patterns where 3 planets connect together in these kinds of aspect patterns. I'll give it 50 points. But only 50 points if it was all perfectly exact. As the orbs get bigger, the points get smaller. And if it's 32nd harmonic, only Mars through Pluto, because the inner planets, this gets only a 1/2 degree orb, they can go through this so quickly it could last a day or less. So we only use more outer planets. For Jupiter through Pluto, we can go up to 64th, and for Saturn through Pluto, we can give 128th, and I give fewer points for the higher harmonics. Now, if your head is spinning, don't let it spin too much. This is really not that complicated. All I'm really saying is, there's this idea that you can continue to take higher vibrations, keep taking halves and halves and halves, go, 1/2, 1/4, an 1/8, a 16th, a 32nd. All of these aspects might be important. I personally am certain that they're important, but I know most people are very skeptical of it. And the outer planets will stay in these higher fractions, like 1/20th and 64th, for for days or weeks, so we will include these aspects for the outer planets, but we're going to give it fewer points. We'll give fewer points for these higher harmonics under the assumption they're not as important as the lower harmonics. So we build a model. What we've done is we've built a clear model of how these hard aspects work, and then we can watch the graph. And amazingly, you can set all this up very quickly and very easily in the Kepler and the Sirius software. So I set it up, I ran the graph, and I've already shown you the graph, and it will also tell you what aspects are occurring. Well, let me run it so you can see how I produce this. Let's go over here, and I'll just go, I'm in the Sirius 2.0 software. I'm quite sure you can do this in Kepler as well. I'll go to Forecast. Kepler is just is like the normal level of the software. The Sirius is the unbelievably does everything, Vedic, Hellenistic, goes on forever and ever version of it, but I think this is in Kepler as well. We go to Forecast, we go to Electional Forecast, and then you have all these kinds of Electional. I put it in the main Forecast AstroSignatures, and down here I created the formula, and I called it 3 planet hard aspects. I created it just by clicking on New Search AstroSignature, and it opens up this window. I'll go to Customize. I'll go to the Transit to Transit, and you just click on these things, and then you click on Insert New Item, and you create a list. And it's this long list of patterns, and they are the 3 planet harmonic patterns. Now, I know this is difficult to read on your screen, and it might even be reduced on your screen and be impossible to read, but basically, excuse me, this is a list of the 3 planet patterns where I say I want 16th harmonic, I want 32nd harmonic of Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars, Jupiter, Uranus. Anyway, it's a list of the 3 planet patterns, and here's the strength, in other words, the number of points that I gave it, and I created the list. And after I create the list, I can just click on Begin the Analysis. In fact, I'll do that because it runs pretty quickly for 4 months. What did I do? July 1st, 2017 to November 1st, 2017. So I've checked. I want my 3 planet hard aspects. And then I run it, and it will produce a graph, and it will produce the details of what's occurring on those days. Okay, so it's almost done. There we go. And here's the graph. I went off my screen. I'm capturing just part of my screen for this. And there's the graph, the same exact graph that I just showed you in the PowerPoint. That's how I created the graph. And then over here, let me drag this into the visible area. I can click on this to exclude charts with a score of 0. And there's the list. So for example, if I want to look at August 4th, when this goes extremely high, I scroll down to August 4th. I'll highlight this so you see what I'm referring to. It may be very small and difficult to read, but in the actual program, it's very readable. Let me get rid of that highlight. This area here is everything that occurred on August 4th. These are the 3 planet patterns. Mars, Jupiter, and Pluto were in harmonic 16, all within a 6-degree orb. And it gets this many points, 37.18 points. There's so many 3 planet patterns on that day. And notice the harmonic for most of these is 32nd, something almost no astrologers use. So this is fascinating. We can test this idea, and some crazy astrologers like David and other people think you can go into these high harmonics, and according to these high harmonics, there are a ton of planets. Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Mars, all of these planets are all within 32nd harmonic. 32nd harmonic has a tiny orb. What would it be? Half a degree orb. And they're all within that half a degree orb. By the way, here it's giving different numbers. This is an orb in the harmonic chart. And it gets a little more advanced. We don't have to worry about that. But in the actual chart, they're all within a half a degree orb. The planets just all line up in this, you can call it vibrational pattern. We have this theory that there are these additional hard aspects. All the planets line up in not all, lots of planets are lined up in these higher vibrations, creating a highly energized time. And what is energizing it? It's actually Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto right here. The three most outer planets are in a 30-second harmonic pattern for the entire month of August. If we scroll through August, let's go down here. See, on these dates, August 7th, 8th, it's only the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. They are fixed. The distance between them is hardly moving at all, and they stay very close. This is 6 degrees out of 16 degrees. Well, that's a little complicated if you don't know about harmonics, but this is an orb in the harmonic chart, so they all have the same orb. It's actually easier to relate to. It's very tight. The bottom line is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are in this dynamic combination for the entire month. That's what Linda and Starlene told me, and I thought, oh no, this is going to lead to fanaticism. Why fanaticism? Uranus, Pluto, volatile. Uranus, Neptune it's like conspiracy theories, it's dreams and visions. Positively, people are very spiritual and aspiring to, more transcendental, wonderful things. But it also, more often, unfortunately, results in people just losing their sense of reality. They get caught up in some dream or vision or concept that's really not very well based in reality, and they have these fanatical, crazy ideas, and anything from white supremacists to any other kind of wacko idea gets energized. So this is the vibration, and it brings this out in people. And the people that are vulnerable to being delusional will express their delusional nature. And Pluto, it's going to be compulsive and fanatical and very deeply rooted. And then when an inner planet moves into it, like on August 13, 14, 15, we see the sun moved into that pattern. See, it says Sun, Uranus, Neptune. Sun, Uranus, Neptune. It moves into the pattern. So when an inner planet moves in there, and an inner planet moves in on August 21st, 22nd, on those 2 days, and it's Mars. See that? Mars gets involved with the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. The graph goes up on the 21st and 22nd, which happens to be when the eclipse is occurring on the 21st. And Mars is going to be aggressive and energized. So I'm a little bit concerned that the terrorists and the nutcases are going to go a little bit wild. This might be their insane way of celebrating or marking this cosmic event. So a lot of people have been predicting extreme things during eclipses, but generally extreme things don't happen every time there's an eclipse. But this month, I think it is happening, not so much because of the eclipse, but because of this bump in energy level. We saw when I started this video over 2 years, this is the biggest rise in energy, and it's Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, which is a kind of, you might say, dangerous combination. Can be inspiring, but with individuals, it's sometimes easier to deal with them with the collective for these things. So it's disruptive on the collective, when it's just in the sky for everybody. So it's fascinating. I hope you're following all this. I know it's a lot of new information for many of you, but the basic idea is that if you come up with some idea that maybe you just use more normal astrology, just squares and oppositions, and you want to graph that out and see how it plays out, you can do that, and you can see how it works, and you can see the details. And it helps you evaluate it and to clearly make your forecast. Now, if we scroll down, we'll find the following. Well, if we scrolled up to August 2nd, we would see that Jupiter gets involved. So early in August, not so bad, enthusiastic visions and dreams. As we start getting into the 4th, Mars gets involved. We get more confident vision, revolutionary. By the 8th, we're seeing that Uranus, Neptune, Pluto is running through the whole month. And here's the 21st, when Mars gets in, fanaticism, potential violence on the day of the eclipse, and that time period. And then by September, the pattern has changed. The Uranus, Neptune, Pluto now has a large orb. When it has a small orb, the asterisks are put there. It's Mercury, Saturn, Mars. So the energy has faded out by early September. So it's basically August. And then in late September, October, we see Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune. So Uranus and Neptune are in 16th harmonic, and Jupiter joins it and the Sun. When you get Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, you get expansion, enthusiasm, and sometimes opportunism. This has happened a lot when there's Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune energy. The United States in particular often tends to go on these crusades thinking it can convert people to the beautiful democracy and everything, and it's rather naive and it doesn't work, so I'm concerned that's going to happen again. It's actually basically late September is when that happens. By October, the energy is really changing to Mercury, Venus, Saturn. It's more literature and thoughtfulness. So this enthusiasm, expansion, and opportunism is basically very late September and into very early October. So that's it. The prediction is we're going to have a lot of tension, a lot of craziness, a lot of people going way off into, delusional stuff. Basically, for the rest of this month, I'm concerned about the next few days in particular. And then in late September, we'll see some attempts to get the bad guys, but they might have the problems of being naive and overly optimistic and a little greedy in the process as well. So that's it, and that's how I make the forecast using these graphing techniques, the AstroSignature forecasting methods in the Sirius and Kepler program. Oh, and let me show you this. Final note, very last thing. If we look at a chart for this time period in August, I picked August 12th for no particular reason, about the middle of August, and we look at a chart wheel for that time period. What is going on here? Let me return here. Okay. All right, so I've got a chart wheel up here for August. This is August 12th, 12 noon in London, England. And here's Uranus and Neptune. And what's happening is they're exactly 45 degrees from each other. 13 Pisces 29 to 28 Aries 29. And if I look at the 8th harmonic chart, it will tell me that Pluto is getting involved with the Uranus-Neptune. Here's the 8th harmonic chart. And in the 8th harmonic chart, Uranus and Neptune turn into a conjunction, square Pluto, and it's difficult to read on the reduced screen size, but it says 9:30 seconds and 5:30 seconds right on the wheel. If I go back to the natal chart, Pluto is 5:30 seconds of a circle from Neptune and 9:30 seconds of a circle from Uranus. I want to just show it to you in the actual chart, in the actual sky. What's happening is Uranus and Neptune are semi-square, 45 degrees apart. Pluto comes into 32nd harmonic to this. Notice they're all retrograde, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and they're all moving very, very slowly retrograde, and they stay locked in this configuration for a month. And I believe that it's this pattern that's making things a little tense and extremists and fanatics going overboard this month. That's what I had anticipated when Linda and Starlene told me about it, and it feels like it's really true. And this gives us a way to gauge how long this will last and exactly what's going on. Okay, well, there's a lot of information. If you're not used to this, you can always play this video a few times and think about it. There's several points I'm trying to make. Hopefully you've learned something about some ideas in astrology about people who use these additional aspects, ways to graph things and visualize what's going on, which you can use with any ideas, and also specifically the forecast for what's going on this month and why things have gotten crazy, nuts, and a lot of delusional people creating a lot of problems. And unfortunately, I think it's going to last another week or two. So be safe out there. Thank you very much for listening, my friends. God bless. Namaste.